The Missouri Tigers' season hopes pretty much lie on this upcoming game against the Alabama Crimson Tide as they walk into Bryant-Denny Stadium for Week 9 of the college football season. Joey Van Zummeren here for the All Things Mizzou podcast presented by Missouri Tigers on SI. I'm joined by another one of my football writers, Michael Stamps, who will be in Tuscaloosa this weekend. Michael, how are you doing on the biggest week of Mizzou season at this point?
Well, the college football fan side of me is very excited to be in Tuscaloosa this weekend, so that'll be a fun experience. Could not be more excited for that, but I mean, you said it pretty well yourself. The rest of the season lies on this game with Missouri and Alabama, and it's gonna be interesting. I think there's a lot of factors playing in to what's gonna happen. Primarily the injuries, which we'll hit on later, and um, really, really bad time to have that long list of injuries like the Tigers do. As we are talking, it could be different by the time this gets posted. Excuse me, but as of now, there's a lengthy list of guys that are either questionable or doubtful, or obviously there's the 4 guys that are out right now. So that'll be a main contributing factor. It's kind of hard to see what the success of this team looks like without Brady Cook. So if not, he is playing, that'll be a crucial factor and will probably change the tide of the game. So it'll be interesting. Like I said, I could not be more excited to go to Tuscaloosa and get some coverage out there for everybody. So that'll be a fun experience as well.
Yeah, this game hinges on, like you said, Michael, the health of Brady Cook. I'm not saying they win it if he plays, but if he doesn't play, I'm pretty confident that they lose this game. With all due respect to Drew Pine, I mean, I think crazier things have happened, but this would be near the list of crazy things to happen if Mizzou walks in and they're already 13-point upsets and then Drew Pine leads them to victory. But like you said, though, too, not only does this game is Mizzou dependent on this game for the rest of the season, but also Alabama. I mean, it's hard to see them having a route to the college football playoff if they have 3 losses by week 9, by the end of week 9 of the season. One of them is against a team that is still surprisingly unranked in Vanderbilt. And for both their losses so far, both of them have been on the road. Bryant-Denny Stadium is a really tough place to play in, as was Kyle Field. Alabama football is still Alabama football, and it's going to take maybe a decade or two for that reputation they built up to fall off, even no matter the results that Kalen DeBoer delivers. But for this Mizzou team, looking back quickly at this win over Auburn here, obviously the storyline of Brady Cook has been exhausted to this point. Mizzou football just posted earlier this evening the mini movie for this game where you can see the security footage of Brady Cook walking through the sliding glass doors of the hospital. So great stuff there. But really looking back at this game, the thing has been like, what can we take away from this game? You know, Brady Cook plays 60% of snaps, but he plays the first drive of the first quarter. He plays the last drive of the third quarter. He comes in the third quarter when there's 25 seconds remaining in that, and then plays the entirety of the fourth quarter, where it kind of became a back and forth punching game before Missouri finally seals the deal on that last drive there. And even in that, the time he played in near the end of the game, they're in tempo for a lot of it. But I would say that was some of the best drives we've seen from the offense so far this year. Some of the best scrambles we've seen from Brady Cook. Some of the best improvising we've seen from Brady Cook all season long. Some of the best decision making we've seen from Brady all season long. So it took a trip to the hospital to inspire that, but obviously just a great performance by him and this Mizzou team. But as far as offense, what did you like from the Mizzou unit in this one?
Well, I mean, obviously the ability to move the ball down the field in that third and fourth quarter was the best I mean, you definitely saw all game, but arguably the best we've seen all season. I mean, it was efficient and good quick passes to the outside of the field. Get your, like I've said a million times before, the ball and let them make a play. But at the same time, a lot of those are throws to the outside of the field and not much after the catch, just quick 10, 15-yard throws. And, obviously Brady Cook was banged up and wasn't the most mobile he's ever been, so he was kind of forced to sit in the pocket, and he did make a couple runs, but he was kind of forced to sit in the pocket and make some throws like that. So maybe, if that's something we can continue to see out of Brady Cook, this offense is completely different. But again, just the tempo and the pacing of how the offense played. Nate Noel was in and out of the game, so you didn't see much of the run. I mean, Drew Pine didn't sabotage the team by any means. I mean, he missed some throws you certainly would have liked to see him make, but he didn't turn the ball. I guess he did turn the ball over, but it was a fumble. But throwing the ball, he didn't turn the ball over. So that was that. I think uh, he probably would have liked to be hit less. So maybe you can look into the pass protection a little bit there. He got pressured a decent amount and got hit a couple times. Drew Pine did so, and then obviously Brady Cook, in the first part of the game when he was injured, he was running for his life. So that's something you could look into as well. Maybe a bit of a negative there, but I mean that last drive, and again, it's a special game situation. It's tempo offense, no huddle offense, and you're moving quick, and obviously the defense doesn't get that same time to get set up. So it's a little different. But I think the quality of the passes Brady Cook was making in those scenarios is something that needs to be praised and taken away from, because that really isn't something we've seen, all year. And it wasn't the deep ball like everybody's looking for, besides that Mookie Cooper completion, but those quick passes are ones that they've kind of just been lacking consistently, and you've seen them, here and there. But just quick 10, 15-yard passes to guys like Theo Weiss and Luther Burden, and that sort of thing are very important to an offense when you're trying to move the ball to the field, which has been a little inconsistent. So I think that would probably be the biggest takeaway from the offensive performance. The run game was just kind of shaky because of without Nate Noel, and Marcus Carroll had a couple good runs, and obviously Jamal Roberts gets in there and scores a touchdown, but nothing overly consistent. And Noel had a decent, 6 or 7 carries maybe before he left with injury. So that was a little shaky. And I think that was kind of the theme of the whole game offensively, just, the lack of tempo and consistently and being able to string play after play after play together because of those injuries. So it's kind of hard to draw a lot from it. But I think Brady Cook's consistency with those, mid-range throws was very impressive, and something that you have to cross your fingers he's going to be able to do game to game, assuming he's playing.
Yeah, exactly. And even on the one to Mookie Cooper that really opens things up. I mean, like I talked about the Mizzou mini movie, the thing that I gained from that, besides the hospital footage, was a great shot behind Brady Cook's back, and you can see what Brady has seen in that one. I mean, it's even better than an all 22 shot, and you can see the defenders moving into the picture, and he delivers it into a really tight window. It's a great pass to Mookie Cooper. And I mean, obviously, Mookie Cooper does a lot of the work there, but it's a great pass by Brady. And like you mentioned, Michael, you especially saw on that touchdown drive in the fourth quarter that sealed the deal, where they're just consistently relying on those shorter passes. And it was kind of what we talked about a few weeks ago. Like, look, if the deep ball isn't there, it's not there. And if it's not going to work for this offense, then maybe maybe they just need to accept that. And I'm not commenting on any of the coaching staff's refusal to admit that or anything, but maybe that's just not a part of this offense. And looking at how they converted those third and fourth downs, because they faced quite a plenty on that last drive there. I mean, the first one, Brady runs for 14 yards. It was great play by him, and it was the most he's looked like himself in the run game since last season. And it's not been because of bad plays by him this season, but he just hasn't had that same improvisation, maybe because of confidence or whatever. And then on the next third down, it's 3rd and 18. They get Luther a 13-yard reception, gain some of that yard back. And the very next play, he goes to Luther again. And it's, again, a great pass by him to deliver it in a tight window. And then to your point, Michael, on that last 3rd and 10 there, he finds Theo Weiss right near the Mizzou sideline. And it's a great catch by Theo. There was one earlier in the game when Brady was returning, though, that Joshua Manning, when they were driving into the red zone, Joshua Manning has an incredible possession catch that we've been talking about since the start of fall camp, that way he can provide an outlet for this offense. So, yeah, I do agree with you that this was, as much as it was only one quarter of offense that we saw from them, it did seem like a step forward for them. On the defensive side of things for this one, like I said, 4-quarter dominant performance. And for all the excitement about Brady Cook returning and all the praise he's deservedly getting from this one, None of that means anything if the defense doesn't hold this game together, and he doesn't. If he isn't getting the score update in the hospital that it's 3-3 at halftime, he's probably not trying as hard to come back. He has all the effort in the world too, but if Mizzou is losing by 3 or 4 possessions, he's probably not as motivated, and the trainers and coaching staff are probably not as willing to let him go back into that game. This defense, really strong performance in this one, all besides the 47-yard touchdown that Cam Coleman had to open the second half. Really solid all around, especially coming after, the last SEC game we saw from this team was Texas A&M. Coming after that one where so much stuff was open over the middle of the field, pass rush was basically non-existent. They get so many key sacks in this game. Eli Drinkwitz shouted out the pass rushing group specifically yesterday in his midweek press conferences. Eddie Kelly, Johnny Walker Jr., Ja'Kai Lane, Zion Young, too, all had key sacks in that one. Eddie Kelly didn't record a sack, but he was all over the field causing havoc. And that was really a difference maker in this game, the way the defense performed. Michael, what did you think of that side of the ball?
Well, Zion Young had his best game as a Missouri Tiger so far. He had 3 of those quarterback pressures of the 11 they recorded of the game, and it just seemed like he was everywhere. He had a couple tackles, couple stops in the backfield as well. You mentioned Eddie Kelly, who didn't record a sack. I was arguably the most impressed with him compared to anybody on the defensive line, maybe outside of Zion Young. He had 2 plays in a row, 2 tackles for loss, and I don't know. I guess I don't know if one he recorded or not. It might have gone to Corey Flagg, but we'll go with 1.5 or 2, whatever we want to call it. But 2 consecutive plays where he stopped Jarquez Hunter in the backfield, and it just you could feel the momentum swinging, and his ability to stay stout. And he is so athletic for how big he is. It was just so impressive, and really showed what he's capable of there. You saw Williams Nwaneri get after the quarterback, like you mentioned. Ja'Kai Lane gets his sack. Obviously, Johnny Walker was impressive. It just seemed like everyone was everywhere, and that needs to be consistent. I've said this on multiple occasions. I don't think you can win football games without being able to get after the quarterback, and they did that. And even if it wasn't pretty, you have to attribute the ability to pressure Peyton Thorne. You have to attribute that to the win as a whole. I think outside of the defensive line, Dalen Carnell had a ridiculously impressive game. He was great. Obviously, he had that hit on Rivaldo Fairweather. Never got an update on if Rivaldo Fairweather was okay or not, and I mean that seriously because that did not look like a pleasant hit at all. But even outside of that, he was just a great tackler, and we've talked about tackling angles. And in the first quarter, little dicey. I think Dalen Carnell, you could tell, watching the broadcast while watching the game, that he knew exactly what he was doing when he was, one-on-one tackling. So he was impressive. Corey Flagg is always impressive. He is just a tackle machine. Marvin Burks was great. I don't think Peyton Thorne really got the opportunity to make a lot of great passes outside of the Cam Coleman reception. That was a little fluky. It was kind of a blown coverage, which maybe is an issue in its own. We've seen a couple of those this year, obviously against Boston College. And, you look back at Boston College and you even look at this last game. If you don't have 3 blown coverages, you win comfortably against Boston College, and the Auburn outcome looks very different. So it's not a consistent issue, but they're still there and definitely are affecting games. So that's probably something you could go ahead and look into as well. So, small errors like that you need to deliver, need to get rid of. But all in all, best defensive game we've seen from Missouri so far. You hope it gets better, but that's a very, very high bar on, all 3 levels of the field.
Yeah, exactly. And they force the turnover too. They get a fumble in the second quarter right after the offense gives up one of their own. That they got 2 fumbles on that drive within 5 plays. Well, Jarquez Hunter was definitely down on that the first fumble, but nonetheless,
1,000%.
forcing the ball to lose 2 times. But yeah, a great performance all around by this defense, and this Mizzou defense, or Mizzou's going to definitely need it against Alabama this week. And you mentioned it, Michael, a few times here. The injuries Mizzou is going to be facing in this one. In the first availability report we got Wednesday evening, Brady Cook and Nate Noel, we heard from Pete Thamel earlier in the day, were going to be doubtful, and that is the case. Thamel also said that Nate Noel is going to be out for this one. And then Mookie Cooper, um, doubtful for this game. Not sure what the injury is there. He played the full game against Auburn, to my knowledge. So interesting to see he's doubtful. Sidney Williams, he exited the game early on with an injury. He is questionable. Trevez Johnson, the safety, questionable. And Dalen Carnell, questionable also for Carnell and Johnson. Not sure what the deal is there. We're available again, to my knowledge, for the full Auburn game. Joseph Charleston, questionable. He had an injury he was dealing with a few weeks ago. Seemed like he was fully recovered from that. So not sure if that's related or not. And then finally, Brett Norfleet, questionable, and Marquise Johnson, probable. Marquise Johnson, he was dealing with that ankle injury he suffered being tackled on a kickoff against Vanderbilt that made him limited against Texas A&M. He wasn't added to the injury report, though, for Mizzou until Friday of last week before Auburn, and then he was a game-time decision. So not sure if that ankle was flaring up for him again or if it's something unrelated. But I think, obviously this is a long list of injuries that Mizzou does not want. But I think looking at this, I mean, for every availability report we've got from them so far this year, I want to say that every player that's been listed as questionable has ended up playing. I'm not sure on doubtful or probable. I think Marquise was probable for the Auburn game on Friday, and then he ended up playing. But almost everybody that's been questionable has played. Doubtful hasn't been too much experience with that, and obviously with Brady, very unique situation, and then with Mookie, not knowing what the injury is, not knowing when he suffered it, makes it a big guessing game. But I mean, Michael, how does I mean, looking at this list here, I mean, it's hard to say. Or I forgot to mention Caden Green on that list too, and again was available. I know for sure he played 100% of the offensive snaps against Auburn, so not sure what's going on there, but he's questionable. But looking at this list, I mean, you could almost go down one by one, listen, who's going to step up here, but just how does, I mean, assuming Brady plays in this one, because obviously that would be the obvious answer to this one, but is there any one that sticks out to you specifically? It's like if they're not without, if they can't have this guy, then things become really challenging against Alabama.
I mean, I don't know if this is the obvious answer or not, but I mean, Mookie Cooper has quietly been a excellent receiving option, and I know his 78-yard reception last week probably inflates his receiving stats a little bit, but he's been an excellent third option, sometimes second or first option when Luther Burden's out or someone else isn't playing as well as they should. So, I mean, you obviously have guys plenty of guys that can play receiver on this team. So it wouldn't be the biggest issue, but he's been a pretty consistent presence. Man, I mean, any of the four safeties listed, Joseph Charleston, Carnell, Trevez Johnson, Sidney Williams, any of the four of those guys, those are all impact playmakers and have all had games where they've stepped up. And you still have Marvin Burks, obviously healthy as far as we know. You have guys like Trajan Greco and Caleb Flagg that can step in if need be. Those are the only two other safeties we've seen to my knowledge. So maybe Philip Roche, but I mean, other than that, you don't want to be missing all four of those guys. We don't know the extent of any of these injuries. I mean, you said it best when most of these guys that have been questionable so far have usually ended up playing. So all you can do is really cross your fingers. You don't want to be missing four of your starting safeties. So Caden Green is one where not that you could live without him, but Mitch Walters is a proven guy that can step in there, and he didn't play much against Auburn, which was honestly pretty surprising. But that's a guy that, if you look at all of these, maybe outside of Mookie Cooper and Nate Noel, sliding Mitch Walters in for Caden Green is probably a decision they'd be pretty comfortable with. Outside of that, it gets a little dicey. So I think you really need to cross your fingers that at least two of those safeties, especially Dalen Carnell, I mean, that is a pretty massive loss if he's not in the game. So you got to cross your fingers. I think that some of those safeties are available to play, to the fullest extent. And then, I mean, obviously we don't need to talk about Brady Cook, but I think you need him a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what I look at specifically is the fact that Dalen, Sidney Williams, and Travis Johnson are all on this injury report. Dalen is their starting star, and I mean, I mean, star plays an important role in any 4-2-5 defense, but especially when you're going up against Alabama that has so many offense playmakers, where Jalen Milroe targets the middle of the field, especially that'd be tough. And I starting star is Dalen Carnell. Right behind him is Sidney Williams. And then their third option would be Travis Johnson. So I would assume at least one of those guys is going to be able to go into this game. But like you said, Michael, all three of them being on the injury report, and then Travis Johnson would also help out a little bit on the back end too, would be rough for Mizzou in this one where they're going up against so many offensive playmakers. I think Brett Norfleet, looking at him and Mookie Cooper, like you said, I think the fact that Mookie Cooper is doubtful is pretty concerning. Obviously, like you said, with the 78-yard reception, showed off all of his ability and really adds a such challenge for the defense to choose to defend out of him, Weiss, and Burden. So we'll see what it looks like in this game. I don't think Mizzou fans should take that injury report and be terrified that they're going to have to go out there with all backups on the field. But at the very least, I mean, if all these guys play in the game and are still limited, even, it's not great. You want to be at full force against Alabama, of course, but that's the challenge of football. Next man up. We'll see how Mizzou responds to that. For Alabama side of things, safety Keon Sabb, Kalen DeBoer announced is going to be missing a few weeks here, or he said he'll be out for a while. So no surprise to see him there. Linebacker Caden Jones, and then defense back Red Morgan. Caden Jones is out, and then Red Morgan probable. So that's the injury report as of Wednesday. Moving on to this game here against Alabama. First off, I mean, just talk a little bit. I mean, we mentioned at the top, and I don't think we need to harp on too much the importance of Brady Cook being in this game. But looking at Drew Pine, I mean, I don't know if it's even worth talking about what he adds to this, what he would add to this offense, because it would just be a mountain to climb if he's in there. Not only, I mean, just for the sole fact, and I think this is why he struggles so much, because he doesn't have a full control of the offense. He's been at practices. I'm sure he's studying film. He's a veteran. But to not, I mean, last week was his first action at SEC game, and I think that was evident with his lack of quick decisions, his hesitancy when holding on to the ball, that caused quite a few sacks for him. And I mean, going up against Alabama, Brian Denny Stadium, I don't think we need to harp on, like I said, too much of his skill set, because I don't think it's going to matter with the fact that he doesn't have a full control of the offense. He doesn't have a great repertoire with the receivers, for obvious reasons. So, like we said at the top, this game hinges on Brady Cook being able to play or not. Also, for this offense here, no matter who is in at quarterback, really, the run game, I think, is going to be so important in this one. And I think Mizzou can't let this game become a shootout. I don't think they even they haven't shown anything offensively to believe they could even make it a shootout or get into a shootout. They haven't. The explosive play hasn't been there. But if it does become that, and they finally, start hitting on these deep balls, Luther Burden is making some plays. Theo Weiss is able to catch some deep ones. Like, I don't think they want that. I mean, obviously, they want to hit on those explosive plays because it's been lacking all season. But I don't know if they can keep up with Alabama in that department. And the game plan for Missouri in this one, and Eli Drinkwitz kind of alluded to this on Wednesday morning, the SEC coach's call, of holding on to the ball, playing the ball, keeping the ball away out of the hands of Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams and all the rest of playmakers on Alabama's offense. Drinkwitz mentioned what Vanderbilt did, and Vanderbilt won time of possession against Alabama in their win 42 minutes to 17 minutes, which is pretty nuts. Alabama's average time of possession per drive was 1 minute and 45 compared to Vanderbilt's 4 minutes and 40 seconds. So Vanderbilt was able to run it quite a bit. They even when Alabama was going down, scoring pretty easily, operating as usual on offense, Vanderbilt then turned around, had a long drive, and because they built a lead in the first half, they were able to just sustain it, stick to the run game, not try to close it all in one play, but instead sticking to it, running quite a bit of time off the clock. And so for Mizzou in this one, if they're able to get that run game going, I mean, Eli, when he was talking about this, said, the running game, he hasn't been pleased with it. They haven't been able to run it when they need to. And the run game has been successful for them quite a bit this season, I would say. But I do think he makes a point in the fact that they haven't been able to mix it quite right with the passing game so far this season, and they're going to need to rely on it in this one again. They can't have this become a shutout. And even without Nate Noel in there, I would still be confident in this running group. Much more confident than I am in the receiver group without Mookie Cooper or Brett Norfleet if those two are missing. But with running backs, I'm still really confident in Marcus Carroll and Jamal Roberts. I mean, Marcus Carroll has all the resume that we talked about in the offseason. 1,300 yards with Georgia State last season. He's shown in the playing time he's got this season that he can be a workhorse still, even if he's not a lightning quick back. But I mean, especially in this game where you're trying to run the clock off, you're trying to play keep away, having a bruising back like him that can exhaust Alabama defense would be huge if he can get into a flow. So, Michael, I mean, what are your thoughts on that, and just kind of what the game plan needs to be for Mizzou offensively to play the best defense on offense?
Well, I mean, like usual, I completely agree with you, Joey. I don't see a universe where Missouri wins this game with Drew Pine at quarterback. And again, it's nothing against his skill level, but it's just a familiarity thing. And you could tell, excuse me, you could tell he was missing on simple throws and didn't know exactly where his guys would be on certain throws. And you don't have to point fingers. I mean, it goes both ways. Pine should know where they're going to be, and maybe those receivers need to adjust to Pine at quarterback. So it goes both ways there. I think it's going to be a very low scoring game. I mean, especially if it's Pine at quarterback, you're going to see a lot of runs. And Marcus Carroll, he broke off a couple bigger runs against Auburn. For the most part, he's a small, short yardage guy, and we might, if Nate Noel truly is out, which it seems like he is, we're going to see a good taste of Jamal Roberts, because you'd imagine he's a guy who can get down the field maybe a little bit easier. So if it's Drew Pine at quarterback, you have to simplify the offense as much as you can. Just another situation where you just get the ball in the hands of Luther Burden, in the hands of Theo Weiss, in the hands of Josh Manning, who haven't talked about him much, but he has been ridiculously impressive recently. Love what we've seen from him. Get the ball in the hands of those guys. You don't have to throw the ball down the field. If you can open up the middle of the field and get some crossing routes and that sort of thing, do that. But get them in short yardage situations and let them make plays, and do not turn the ball over. If you turn the ball over, you dig yourself in a hole, then you're going to have to start moving the ball down the field. And we haven't seen anything from Drew Pine that's going to make us believe he can do that. So I think a big thing is going to be not turning the ball over. Hasn't, knock on wood, hasn't been an issue really with Brady Cook or Drew Pine outside of that fumble. And I think, going back to that, Drew Pine's fumble with Marcus Carroll, I believe it was Marcus Carroll, was a perfect example of his level of familiarity with the offense. You look at Brady Cook, who's taller, longer arms. Drew Pine's a little shorter, doesn't have the same, arm length, which sounds silly, but Brady Cook knows exactly where the ball needs to be when he's handing that off to Marcus Carroll. You could tell that fumble, it wasn't necessarily poorly executed. It was just wrong location. Marcus Carroll was used to being in a certain spot to pick it up from Drew Pine, and Drew Pine, is not. You could tell he was extending his arms, trying to get to Marcus Carroll. So that was a perfect example of that lack of familiarity with the offense. That, I mean, I would imagine he's getting a lot of reps this week, regardless of if Brady Cook is going to play. So you'd imagine he's going to get a lot of preparation, a lot of reps with the ones, to prevent those things from happening. But it's the hard truth is that the offense is much more limited if Drew Pine's at quarterback, and you're going to see a lot of handoffs. I would imagine it's a, you know, 20 carry Marcus Carroll game if Drew Pine's in at quarterback, and it's going to be a lot of short throws and that sort of thing. So I think offensively, if you have Drew Pine at quarterback, you got to keep it simple and just get the ball to your guys and let them make plays.
Yeah, and what you said there about being simple too, Eli Drinkwitz has made a point of that both in his press conference and then on the Paul Pine show today of kind of simplifying things down. And it doesn't, you can win the game in X and O's, you can draw it up and think you've got the perfect plan. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't work with the personnel you have, and if the players aren't able to execute it, then you're better off simplifying it. So we'll see how that looks offensively. He says he learned that at Texas A&M. I think, what we were just talking about with the run game too, and sticking to it, staying ahead of the sticks is going to be a big thing too. Eli Drinkwitz talked about it in what I was talking about on the SEC call of having to run for 3 yards on first or second down and then come back to it, get into manageable third down situations. It's staying ahead of the sticks is always important, but especially on the road, when you're dealing with those tough environments, loud situations on third down. So we'll see. As far as that, obviously, it's going to be a loud environment, ranked matchup at Alabama, coming off a loss their season, hinging on this, every game from here on out is must win for them. Theo, we said after the Texas A&M game, you can believe him however much you want, but he said that the crowd noise didn't bother him. That wasn't a factor. It was the fact that they couldn't execute. So, that ties into what Eli Drinkwitz was saying about simplifying things down for their guys to be able to execute it. Looking specifically at the challenge that Alabama presents, looking at their offense, obviously Jalen Milroe, the start of the season was a Heisman contender, and then, when you throw an interception in an important rivalry game late in it, when you have a chance to go out there and tie the game, you're obviously going to lose a little bit of that stake. However, still a really impressive quarterback, has grown since taking over the job last year. Again, another dual threat quarterback from Missouri. Michael, what can you say about the challenge Jalen Milroe presents?
Outside of the interception struggles, he has a great arm and is pretty darn accurate. I think it's not an accuracy issue; it's a decision making issue. And if they could put pressure on Jalen Milroe and make him make bad decisions, I think you're looking at an interesting situation there on defense. But if he has a guy even slightly open, and he has time in the pocket, he's probably going to run. But if he doesn't run, he's going to find his guy. And obviously his vertical ability to get downfield is unlike a lot of other quarterbacks. And we've talked about mobile quarterback this, mobile quarterback that. Everyone's a mobile quarterback, but this is a different level. It seems like, you can argue that they played a mobile quarterback the last 6 weeks, and that's all built up to this. He is the crown jewel of SEC mobile quarterbacks, and he I don't know statistics. He is 330 rushing yards, right? That's pretty darn impressive for a quarterback, and it's not always going to be jumping out the stat sheet, but if you let him escape, he is going to burn you. And not only is he fast, he's physical and he is strong. He can shed a tackle or two there, but I think the other thing is not only does he know how to get the ball to his receivers, but his receivers know how to get open and they know how to, come down with the ball. I'm sure we're going to talk about Ryan Williams here momentarily because he's obviously been impressive, but he's a guy where if you just throw the ball up in his direction, he's going to find a way to come down with it. Same thing with a guy like Jeremy Bernard. Same thing with a guy like Kobe Prentice. And then they have got, Kobe Prentice is, electric with the ball in his hands. Cole Adams, Kendrick Law probably hasn't had the season he's wanted, but he's also a guy that's good with the ball in his hands. They have guys who could, torch you after the catch and guys who can go up and get it. So not only is he a talented quarterback that can find his receivers, but he has talented receivers that can find the ball from the quarterback. So it's a nice pair, I guess, there. But yeah, Jalen Milroe is probably the best quarterback they've played so far and might be the best quarterback they play all season. So they need to be ready for 100% full strength game from Jalen Milroe. And it's one of those things where you're not going to stop him. How can you limit it? How can you contain it to the best of your ability? Because he's going to more than likely do his thing. If you can force turnovers, force interceptions, that's probably, probably the best bet, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, what you were mentioning there about their wide receiver core, we were talking about a pre-show of just going to be interesting to see what they run out there coverage-wise on Mizzou's end because their best cornerback is Drayton Norwood in their eyes, and then just the how do you match the athleticism of Ryan Williams is a challenge, and obviously I would say Toriano Pride and Nick DeLoach have more athleticism. And then you also have Jeremy Bernard lining up in the slot. So what they run out there, and obviously how many safeties they have available is going to affect that, and how much they run zone and man too. So we'll see how that goes for this Mizzou team. Offensive line for Alabama, Eli Drinkwitz talked about just the size they have on that line here, and I had it pulled up just a second ago here. Yeah, let's see. I have from left to right all these guys are obviously well over 6 foot, and their weight from left to right: 360 for Caden Proctor, 325, 290, 310, 327. And just when you watch even a broadcast of Alabama, it's like an absurd lineup for their starting five there. So gonna be, I mean, Mizzou's, like we said, pass rushing unit after some struggles against Texas A&M, really improved, had a great game against Alabama, or Auburn came up in the key moments. So going to be another challenge for them this week. And of course, with Jalen Milroe, better quarterback than Peyton Thorne, and having to stay disciplined in your pass rushing lanes and making sure he doesn't get away for one. So, I mean, Michael, you're talking about a little bit there, but just overall what this Alabama offense presents.
Well, I mean, on the topic of the offensive line, and it's not it's not crazy to talk about Alabama having NFL talent, but I mean, Tyler Booker is probably regarded as one of the better guards, guard tackles in the country. Parker Brailsford, excuse me, probably widely regarded as one of the best, if not the best center in the country. Jaden Roberts, probably regarded as one of the best guards in the country. So you go down the list, and the talent just keeps, getting deeper and deeper and better, which isn't surprising. But when you're preparing, you're not thinking about the rankings and where they're going to get drafted, but you have to acknowledge the talent and the physicality on the offensive line. But yeah, I mean, we didn't really touch on the running backs. They have probably 20 guys on their team who could start at running back, but obviously Jam Miller is the more experienced of the bunch, and he's taken over that RB1 role. He has 402 yards, 5 touchdowns. Justice Haynes, Daniel Hill, Kevin Riley, Richard Young, they have a whole bunch of young freshmen, sophomores that are incredibly talented. So I think regardless of whoever touches the field at running back, it could be just Jam Miller. You could see Miller and Haynes. You could see 3 or 4 of them, depending on how the game's going. They're all going to be talented, fast, athletic, physical. So that's another talented group of guys there. Like I said, I mean, the talent it's Alabama. And even if it's not a Nick Saban Alabama team, you can still recruit like you're Alabama. So the talent is all over the board. And obviously this is a lot of carryover talent, but it doesn't really matter. It's still, a whole bunch of elite recruits and players that are being molded into, great players. So it's might be the best team they play all year. And I think that's something you can't just put to the side.
Yeah, exactly. One last thing on this Alabama offense. I mean, we were talking about it a little bit earlier on of the explosive plays they have, just with all their playmakers they have. Alabama, 17 in the nation for offensive plays over 20 yards. And then the Missouri defense we were talking about too, their struggles with allowing the explosive plays. Number 2 in the nation defensively for allowing plays over 20 yards. So definitely something to watch in this one. And again, they're going to want to avoid having this one becoming a shootout. On to Alabama's defense here. Still a bunch of talent there. They are dealing with, like I said, the injury to Keon Sabb. But other than that, really sound group. Michael, your thoughts on this Alabama defense?
Yeah, Keon Sabb's actually probably a bigger loss than people might realize. He's one of their best defensive players, and he had a really impressive interception against I want to say Georgia. I actually think he had 2 interceptions against Georgia. So versatile guy, but obviously they're gonna be without him. I saw Red Morgan's name on the injury report, and it seems like he's probable, but that's a talented freshman. I think the linebackers jump off the page with Jahad Campbell and Deontay Lawson. And, Campbell could come off the edge and play in the middle. Deontay Lawson's more of a true inside linebacker, both just great tacklers, good in coverage. Can get off after the quarterback as well. Damani Jackson's probably their best corner. Very talented. LT Overton, Jamarian Latham, Q Robinson on the defensive line, all guys who have shown they're capable of getting to the quarterback. Q Robinson has 4 sacks this year. Overton has 2. Jamarian Latham only has 1. It's just I don't want to be too repetitive here, but the talent is just all over the board. I think Tim Keenan the third is probably a guy who doesn't get talked about a bunch. He is 6'2", 326, so a massive defensive tackle there in the middle of the field, and he's kind of come on for them as their lead, interior defensive lineman. So another guy to keep your eye on, and then Malachi Moore, Devonta Smith, 2 of their better safeties, very experienced. I believe they're both seniors and guys who don't make many mistakes, not necessarily jumping off the stat sheet, but those aren't guys who are gonna, let you down per se. Excuse me. And then Zabian Brown's a true freshman, probably one of the best true freshmen in the country at cornerback. I don't need to beat it over. They're loaded with talent at every position, and there's not going to be any. And at least in my opinion, I don't think there are any matchups you look at and you're like, yeah, we could, exploit that area. They have a extremely talented player at each single position on the defensive side of the ball. It's probably one of the best defenses in the country, if we're being perfectly honest with each other.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Womack has brought his team over from South Alabama and the Swarm defense, and you can see what versatility they have with some of the new positions they brought over there after Saban just ran 3-4 for so long. And yeah, I mean, Overton and then Robinson. Overton has 29 pressures on the year, and then Robinson 14, 118 for this group total. Then it's kind of different than, we were talking last week with Auburn and the the build of the defensive ends they had of being kind of more dense guys, more athletic guys. Alabama is kind of a weird mix where it's not your they don't have any massive old style outside linebackers there, but it's kind of a mix between that and the hybrid edges we were talking about last week. Just interesting builds along that defensive line, very versatile on that side of the ball. So one last thing before we wrap up here, looking ahead to this Mizzou Alabama matchup. Again, Michael will be in town for that game to bring you coverage on site of. We want to talk about matchups to watch in this game. Michael, I'll let you go first, and just kind of one that I kind of spoiled a little bit earlier.
Yeah, that's okay. We alluded to Alabama's 2 leading receivers, Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard. Jeremy Bernard majority plays in that slot receiver spot. He leads them in snaps there. I can't remember the exact number. It's going to be an interesting matchup, and like we said, who's going to guard who? Drayton Norwood seems like a dream matchup for Jeremy Bernard. Obviously, the athleticism of Toriano Pride and Nick DeLoach matchup better with Ryan Williams. That being said, Toriano Pride has been the victim of some big plays this season, and Ryan Williams is a big play waiting to happen. So if that's something you're looking to prevent, it's an interesting situation. And if you slide Norwood over, just because, on paper, he's probably their best corner. They play him like he's their best corner. So if it's going to be an interesting situation to see if they slide Norwood over there. Bernard isn't as athletic, but he's physical and that sort of thing, and a little more technical of a route runner than Ryan Williams is. I don't know if that presents better for Toriano Pride or Nick DeLoach. So it's an interesting situation. Excuse me, to see who you're going to put where. At the end of the day, they're both very talented receivers, and it might not always matter who you put where because they're probably both going to, get their own on any given day, especially Ryan Williams. I'd imagine he's being guarded by each team's best cornerback every single game he's played now. And he still put up almost 200 yards against against Georgia and almost 100 yards against Tennessee. Those are 2 very talented teams. So I'd imagine he's getting every team's best now. So if he's gonna get Missouri's best, maybe it's Drayden Norwood. But if Eli Drinkwitz and Corbin Toon like the matchup that Pride and that Pride Deloach duo present, then maybe you see them. Kind of hard, I think, to pinpoint exactly what we're going to see. Like I said, I think physically and profile wise, Drayden Norwood and Jeremy Bernard are kind of a match made in heaven. Just physicality levels and that sort of thing, and his ability to kind of shut down some of those route runners. Obviously, Keandre Lambert Smith, who is not. I mean, he's a after the catch guy, but more known for as his jump ball and go up and get it guy, and he did not do anything. So it'll be interesting to see who they put where. Like I said, I think Norwood and Bernard physically are a match, but if you want your best corner and Ryan Williams, that might be Drayden Norwood as well. So that'll be an interesting matchup. But as far as the importance goes, it's whoever's guarding Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard, because those are two guys you want to make sure you're able to contain.
Yeah, I think we're going to know how this game is going to go very quickly for Missouri, and how they're able to contain those two wide receivers is going to be a big part of it. But we knew very, very quickly into the Texas A&M game how that was going to go for Missouri, and I think it's going to be the same case for this one. Whether that's maybe we won't know the outcome if it's a slower pace game, and again, that's going to be the best possible outcome for Missouri. If in the first quarter of this game, even if Alabama gets on the board, but if Missouri matches it and can have some long sustained drives, then that'll be a much more encouraging sign than whatever they put out there in the first quarter against Texas A&M. My key matchup I'm looking for in this game is just Missouri's offensive line against pass rush for Alabama. I mean, we saw how with Drew Pine and the quarterback, part of it is, again, I've said before on the show, quarterback or sacks is a quarterback stat, and I commented on Drew Pine's hesitancy to throw the ball or to make a decision. So part of it was that, but overall, we've seen this offensive line struggle. We saw them struggle against Texas A&M. We saw them struggle at points to get against Auburn. Drinkwitz mentioned the need to recognize more stump blitzes this week, and with Brady Cook, I mean, in general, in a game like this, you need your offensive line to do good, but especially when you have Brady Cook, who at the very least is going to be limited in this one, to protect him, to keep him upright, give him the time he needs is going to be extra important. And again, just to help stay ahead of the six, we saw him plenty of times take a sack early on in a drive against Texas A&M, and that ruined everything. So offensive line in general is going to have to be on the A game for this one. So, I mean, to round this out, Michael, this feels like a really dumb question, but it's obvious what happens if Mizzou loses this one. Their season, unless it's a really hard fought game and they end up just absolutely killing it in the last 3 weeks of the season, it's difficult to see them having a route to the playoffs here if they end up losing this one. But if they end up winning, what do you think that means, not only for this 2024 Mizzou team, but also for Mizzou as a program?
Well, before I answer your question, I'm going to go slightly off topic for like 20 seconds.
Okay.
I don't think it's been discussed enough that if Alabama loses this game, their season is effectively over. That's a 3-loss Alabama team. Obviously, a loss to Georgia is a loss to Georgia, and if they lose to Missouri, you're looking at a higher ranked and more higher regarded Missouri team. You have that Vanderbilt loss, which, they look good right now, but we don't know how that's going to exactly end up. But if Alabama loses, their season's effectively done. I don't know if you could say Missouri season is completely done if they lose to Alabama as far as the chance of the college football playoff goes, because of how the SEC appears to be beating each other up.
Yeah.
No more. It's hard to say for sure. They're not going to make the playoff or not, but I don't think I could think of a more confidence building and staple of a win than beating Alabama at Alabama would be, as far as recruiting goes, as far as just how that affects the culture and the fans, any sort of negative energy and social media and that sort of thing. How can you not backtrack on that if you go to Alabama and beat the 15th ranked Alabama Crimson Tide? I'm sure people will find a way, but it's kind of hard to imagine how you can think negatively about it. And if I think we've talked, it's kind of been a struggle, and I saw this on Twitter earlier this week, and I thought it was fascinating that we haven't seen a lot of momentum building offensive plays. Um, they haven't had a necessarily a momentum building win. I again don't think I could imagine a more momentum building win than beating Alabama at Alabama. So I think it completely changes the outlook of this team if they can go beat Alabama. Um, it's hard to make a prediction because we don't know who's going to be healthy and who's not going to be healthy. Um, like we mentioned earlier, if it's Drew Pine at quarterback, it's hard to see. I think it's hard to see a world where they win. If they if they have Brady Cook, it's not necessarily a healthy Brady Cook, so you're not getting him at 100%. He certainly gives them more of a chance, but I don't think it's a I don't know how I could place a prediction for this, but yeah, win at Alabama, I mean, completely changes the outlook of the season. Also knocks off an SEC team as far as competition looking for a playoff spot, which doesn't necessarily just help Missouri. It helps a lot of teams, but that's another thing to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime you can get a win in a game where you are 13-point underdogs first off, and then also um, a top 15 ranked team, and this is the lowest Alabama has been in ranks since I believe 2010. And they were it's not too long ago, they were the I believe unanimous number one team in the nation. Um, so it would obviously, I think it would be a skyrocketer for Mizzou as a program, because look, I'm not going to say they have an easy schedule after this, but after this they have a bye week. They have Oklahoma, they have South Carolina, they have Mississippi State, and they have Arkansas. They're going. I'd imagine they're going to be favored in every single one of those games. So it would be on them if they win against Alabama and then aren't able to make the playoffs after that. Honestly, would be completely on them. So, a berth in 12-team playoff alone, it would be huge for recruiting, huge for this program's reputation, and a massive step to that is winning against Alabama. Like I said, I think would send them on a rocket ship, even more than last year's season did. And having it be at Alabama, I mean, Vanderbilt earned a lot of respect for their win over Alabama, but a lot of people still viewed it as a fluke. So to get the chance to do it on their home turf, on homecoming for them, would be quite the statement win for Mizzou. So we'll see if they're able to pull it off. Either way, we'll have coverage for you here at Mizzou on SI, and we'll talk again next week. We appreciate you tuning into this one.